Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
Things about to get really interesting here in Pennsylvania. First, we had the reality star Dr. Oz jump into the Senate race. And soon we could have the state senator who was a loud voice at the January 6th insurrection, held that super spreader event at Gettysburg, if you remember that, where they had that, whatever that was, of people with all these allegations and all of these really bizarre claims that nobody bothered to take into a courtroom. And of course, then off to the Trump White House to buddy up there. And now the more we're finding out, I got to start questioning what beyond that. So for him to jump into the governor's race, wow, it's going to get really entertaining. And it's being reported that Doug Mastriano, the guy who's going to jump into this, is anti-establishment. And I guess if, heading off an insurrection and destroying democracy, I guess if that's anti-establishment, then he's our guy. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, what we really need to be talking about in 2022 and the kind of governor that we need going forward. I've asked Josh Shapiro to come talk with us. Josh is the current Attorney General here in Pennsylvania, also a candidate for governor in 2022. Josh, thanks for taking time for us.
Hey, Rick, great to be back with you. Thanks for having me.
So, I'm looking at, let's start with Doug Mastriano, because I got to get to this guy. Goes to the January 6th thing, has people go with him, big cheerleader for what was going on, has that bizarre court super spreader event thing that he did. This guy, to me, is really kind of dangerous in that truth doesn't seem to matter. Reality just doesn't seem to matter.
Well, he is dangerous, and he's also the modern day Republican Party, and he's also by far the leading candidate for governor in a field of, I think last time I checked, about 14 Republican candidates. The polling shows him way ahead. The modern day Republican Party is built on the big lie. It's built on trying to undermine reproductive rights and worker rights and civil rights in this Commonwealth. And there couldn't be more of a clear distinction between me and them. And I think it should be, seared in everyone's mind just how high stakes this next governor's race is here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, for me, I had someone interview me not too long ago, and they said, what's your number one issue, in Pennsylvania and across the country? And I said, preserving democracy in society and in the workplace. If we lose the right to vote, if every person doesn't have access to that ballot box, game over. Everything else doesn't matter.
Our democracy is indeed under attack. And Rick, it's been under attack for a couple of years now. It started in early 2020, maybe even a little bit before that, with the lies coming from the former president, then amplified by his enablers. It led to litigation. And by the way, Rick, more than 40 times here in Pennsylvania, they sued us to make it harder for people to vote. By the way, every time they went to court, they lost and we won, and we protected the right to vote here in the Commonwealth. But they didn't stop there. They kept on lying, and that led to the violent insurrection on January 6th that the leading Republican candidate for governor participated in. And then they took their fight from our nation's capital to state capitals across this country to pass voter suppression bills and these sham audits. We saw it in Texas, in Georgia, but for the veto pen of our governor here in Pennsylvania, those same voter suppression laws would pass here. That is what's going to be on the ballot going forward in 2022. A clear choice between someone like me, who's going to protect every legal eligible voter, and on the other side, folks who want to suppress the vote, make it harder for people to have their voices heard in our democracy. So when you say this is sort of central or the top thing on your mind, I think it is the foundation upon which everything else is addressed, from worker rights to healthcare to how we educate our kids. If we have voter suppression laws in place in Pennsylvania that are removing people from the conversation about our democracy, it makes it harder to come up with solutions that include everyone.
Yeah, but here's the thing, and the reason I point to Mastriano is, they had that thing in Gettysburg where, you had all these people making these fantastical claims. I saw this and this happened and this happened, and yet none of them actually took those claims into a court of law. Now you're someone you've fought every step of the way in this. If this stuff actually happened, and look, I get it every day. Hey, did you see this? Did you see this? Take it into a court of law. That's where you fight this stuff, not in some blog, not some bizarre website. Take it into a court, and that's how I know it's a lie, and that's how I know it's not true, because at least they've got the integrity not to lie in court, I guess, for now.
Some of them do, and you are absolutely right. I mean, look, they put forth these ridiculous, bogus claims that have been refuted. Here's the truth: we had a free and fair, safe and secure election that Joe Biden won by about 80,000 votes. It's also really important to note that there were less than a handful of claims of voter fraud. They were all prosecuted. And Rick, they were all trying to cast an extra vote for Donald Trump, not even for Joe Biden. Even so, it was immaterial to the overall outcome. But, it is true that these guys lied in their press releases. But when you show up in a court of law, and we were there over 40 times battling against them and winning every single time, you can't lie in court. And the judges, both Republican and Democrat, pointed out those lies and ruled against them every time. The few lawyers that did go to court, like Rudy Giuliani, and lie in court, well, I held them accountable and got sanctions against them. In the case of Giuliani, got his law license revoked. You're not allowed to go in court and lie. It's a shame that they lie in the press releases and the press conferences. You certainly can't do that in court.
Yeah, good on you. And it's what we've needed in this state. And thank goodness you have been the Attorney General fighting these bogus claims every step of the way. And now, look, I know you're running for governor. This is one of those things where I've said from the beginning, if there is a Republican elected governor in 2022, democracy in this state's over. Immediately, they pass no rights at work. Immediately, all of the Alabama, Texas kind of legislation that has been crippling those states is coming here. And I get from people going, no, Rick, you're hyperbolic. You're going too far. And I don't think so, Josh. I think every bit of that, from passing no rights at work right day one, to the same crazy anti-abortion laws, to the anti-democracy laws, the voter suppression stuff, I think all of it comes on day one. I don't even think there's a debate.
Without question, let's just examine the facts here. Let's take those three examples. First, let's talk about reproductive rights. The Texas law that limits abortion after 6 weeks and actually gives individual citizens the ability to bring lawsuits. The folks running against me have either said they're for it, or they've gone a step further and they've sponsored or co-sponsored that legislation. Let's talk about voter suppression. The kinds of laws that have been passed in Texas and in Georgia, these individuals support here in Pennsylvania. But for the veto pen of our governor, they'd be law here. And when it comes to right to work, they've all been firm in their opposition to labor unions and have said that they're for right to work. So this isn't hypothetical. This isn't hyperbolic. This is the reality of who they are. And there is a clear contrast. All of those bad things I just cited, I would veto those bills if they reach my desk. And again, it's not so much an if, but a when, because those bills have been put on Governor Wolf's desk and he's been forced to veto them. We can't lose that veto pen, and we know what we're getting on the other side: undermining worker rights, undermining reproductive rights, and undermining voting rights.
I mean, the hat trick of horrible, to use a hockey analogy. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're here with Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro, candidate for 2020 governor's spot here. You can check out his website, joshshapiro.org. Now, as Attorney General, you've been, for workers especially, you've been out there fighting the fight, especially on the wage front, the wage theft front, something that I've been talking about for years. We need to be much more aggressive in holding employers accountable. This is something that you've actually taken and moved forward in a way that I think is really important. And I think people should know, because I don't think it gets reported on enough anywhere.
Rick, back in 2015 and 2016, when I was running for Attorney General, I appeared on your program and I talked about the need to deal with wage theft and worker misclassification. That's where workers are put to work and basically misclassified so that their wages can be taken from them by greedy corporate executives. Well, when I became Attorney General, I fulfilled the commitment I made during the campaign to start a fair labor section in my office so that we could go out and police bad employers and protect workers. And now, 5 years later, let's look at the results. There are CEOs from Pennsylvania who ripped off workers who are going to jail for ripping off workers because of cases we brought. Let me give you another example. There's a company in central Pennsylvania known as Hawbaker, one of the largest companies in the Commonwealth. Over a 5-year period of time, they did more than $1 billion, that's a B, Rick, more than $1 billion worth of road work in the Commonwealth. And while they were doing that road work, they were required to pay their workers something known as prevailing wage. Well, they didn't pay them their full prevailing wage. Instead, the corporate executives skimmed money off the top and kept it for themselves and took it away from the people who were doing the backbreaking work on Pennsylvania roadways. We looked into it, we investigated, we took criminal action here and filed criminal charges in what became the largest Davis-Bacon prevailing wage theft case in the history of the United States of America. And just last week, actually 2 weeks ago now, Rick, we got every single worker their money back. $21 million was stolen from these workers. We filed these criminal charges against the company, and we got the people their money back. That's the kind of work we're proud of in the AG's office. We got to stand with workers here in this Commonwealth, and I always have.
No, and that's the important part. And you talk about prevailing wage, you talk about the right to join and form unions, something that Republicans, the party as a whole, this is their platform. They are anti-union, they're anti-prevailing wage, they're anti-worker. And they don't seem to have a problem when someone gets ripped off. In fact, you kind of look at the laws and the things that they pursue, it kind of encourages the kind of behavior that we see, which again is another reason why I have no idea how a working person votes for a Republican in this day and age.
I'll just tell you, I mean, part of their playbook is to undermine unions. And I said when I announced my candidacy on the banks of the river in Pittsburgh, I said not only would I continue the work I've done as Attorney General to protect the rights of workers to organize, I want to expand union membership in Pennsylvania, expand the opportunities for all Pennsylvanians to join a union. When we do that, we can lift up wages, we can lift up the kind of benefits people get, and we can create safer environments for people to go to work in. Yeah. That's what's going to help grow our economy.
And more importantly, and the other side of this as well is the big case that you won, the thousands of workers who are going to get their back pay, that never happens if those workers have a union. They don't get cheated to begin with, so we don't have to go after bad employers. Right. You hold them accountable right from the start, which I think is better for everybody. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show here with Josh Shapiro, Pennsylvania Attorney General, candidate for governor here in 2022. Check out the website, joshshapiro.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can do that. I wanted to get your thoughts on what's going on. We got this big virus. My favorite saying lately has been, we're going into a viral blizzard. Omicron has taken over all of things right now. We've had our first death. It's going to get worse, and yet at every turn I look at what's going on in my state here in Pennsylvania and across the country, and you've got the Republican Party who's trying to handcuff any opportunity for government to deal with this. As governor, how would you handle this? I mean, I look at Tom Wolf. He did what he had to do. The mask mandate in school seemed to me a no-brainer. Our courts overturned that, and probably rightly so based on the law. But what do you do when you have one party who's hell-bent on, well, death and destruction?
Yeah, the other side really have been obstructionists. And I can't understand that with the amount of death we've seen in this country, over 800,000 Americans dying as a result of this horrible pandemic, that the other side wouldn't want to come together and work in a constructive manner to keep people safe, to do things that don't restrict our freedom, but instead promote science and understanding and help people empower themselves to be healthy. Let me tell you what we've done in the Attorney General's office. And this is, I think, the model for what we need to do across government, across the Commonwealth. I've got about 1,000 employees in my office from all across Pennsylvania, people who come from all different walks of life. And as soon as this pandemic reached the Commonwealth back in March of 2020, we began talking to them regularly, trying to educate them on what this was all about, ways they could stay safe, giving them the tools they needed to be able to run their daily lives, care for their families, do their work, whatever the case may be. And then when the vaccines came out, we brought in medical experts from all different, walks of life to try and educate and empower our workforce to make the decisions they needed to make to keep themselves healthy. I'm really proud of the fact that we have essentially a 100% vaccination rate. We're in the 90s, and the people who haven't been vaccinated yet have appropriate reasons for not doing that. As a result of that, that allowed us to get back in the office before many companies could. It allowed us to continue to meet our mark and meet our mission for the good people of Pennsylvania. Education and empowerment, defeating the lies and the noise that are coming out from the other side, meeting their BS with real facts and real science, and making people and families feel empowered. Look, I want to keep businesses open. I want to keep workers working. I definitely want to keep our schools open. And the way we do that is through education, empowerment, and helping people make smart decisions and smart choices.
Do you see any scenario where we go back to a shutdown? Do you see any scenario where something like that happens?
Look, certainly not on my watch. I can't speak for Governor Wolf. He can only speak for himself. That's not the answer. The answer is getting people vaccinated. The answer is showing up in communities, getting people access to the science and the data that they need to be able to make this smart choice for themselves so that they and their families can be healthy.
I guess the last question I've got for you, because I don't know why you would want to jump into this mess given the craziness that we see at the Capitol and with this General Assembly, because from day one that you're going to get no help from the other side. How are you going to deal with the divide that we have? And I guess I ask this all the time, and it's kind of rhetorical. How are you going to deal with that divide that we have in this state, given the fact that the Republicans control the General Assembly?
Look, I'm in this because I believe each and every one of us has a responsibility to get off the sidelines, to get in the game, and to do our part. And right now, the stakes could not be higher. And so I want to be in the arena doing my part to try and better people's lives and protect their interests and their rights, as we talked about here earlier on the program, Rick. Look, I've got a long track record of bringing Republicans and Democrats together to get things done. I've got a long track record of taking on really big fights to help people. Just go ask anybody in Western Pennsylvania, 1.9 million Pennsylvanians to be exact, who are about to lose access to their health care because Highmark and UPMC couldn't get along. We brought those two sides together and preserved and protected people's health care.
Great
so
stuff.
I'm going to bring people together. I'm going to take on these big fights. I'm going to lead the Commonwealth in a direction that lifts everybody up.
Good stuff, Josh. I appreciate the time. I wish you the best. I hope you'll come back and talk to us again real soon.
I sure will, Rick. Thanks so much for having me. Stay safe. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year.
Good stuff. Thanks, Josh Shapiro, Attorney General. Make sure you check out the website, joshshapiro.org. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people from the top.